I've got several projects going. I work in colored paper, and I work in with markers. I'm starting to work in color because I've always worked in black and white. And now I'm retired and I have all this time, and I do different stuff. I got a pastel board over here with pastel drawings, and I'm just kind of throwing like what I did for Love and Rockets. I just did scattershotted everything, see what sticks. Everybody's asking, I don't have a linear thing like my brothers do. They have a universe that they go through. I've always thought I'm going to do stuff that people aren't doing right now. I'm not going to do vampires. I'm not going to do whatever. I decided I'm just going to do whatever, strikes me. And a lot of stuff was from based on stuff that was on the news. A lot of my stories. My story, Me for the Unknown, the first time they tried to blow up the World Trade Center from the basement. And it just struck me. I watched on the news and they're saying there's still like 95 people missing. And I go, how do you miss? Or do you go like, hey, they're going to think I'm dead. I'm out of here. I'm in debt. I don't have that, and it just kind of struck me. I go, wow, I bet you a lot of people disappear that way, and just go away and start new lives, maybe lucky or not, or whatever. I don't know. And it just kind of went from there, kind of just thinking like, why would somebody do that, and what would set them off and all that. But then it turned into this big adventure yarn, which I love doing. And
of all the reactions, of all the places for your mind to go,
yeah,
why did it go there?
It just made for an interesting story. Like a lot of times I have stories that are just sitting in the back of my mind, or I've got drawings and stuff and ideas in envelopes. And every once in a while, something like this will happen on the news or something. And I'll go, oh, that'll fit right in this story right here. That's how I did Citizen Rex. I just, everybody was all worried about AI and stuff. And I go, if there was real AI, it would be so commercialized. And so like the first robot guy, he'd be a celebrity, and he just like I put him in the book, So
when you were working full time, did this stuff just did it pile up?
You mean yeah. Okay, sure. But just working on this stuff after working all day was, I was still young enough to have a little bit of energy for that. But I'm not a 2-job kind of person. I could never have 2 jobs. I tried it and I failed every time. And that's what. Anyway, the work became a job, and I just had to get away from it. So
I learned that pretty quickly that that's what your early 20s are for. Your early 20s are for working, and then going home, and then working some more. Oh,
and having the chutzpah to put out a book on your own. It's just like, sure, why not? Let's just let's have a show. Let's put on a show.
Yeah, I mean, it helps when you've got 2 brothers who are also very into it too. I assume the 3 of you are kind of egging each other on to a certain extent.
Yeah. And I just thought, no, there's just no way. We have another 5 to 10 years to wait for these guys to break out. So I thought, let's do this now, and just, take it from there. And the rest is nice history.
It's obvious in hindsight, but what did breaking out look like to you at the time?
It was really exciting because, it's nice to have people paying attention, to you and telling you your work is nice and stuff. I mean, one of the first people we met going to these conventions, I think it was in Los Angeles way back. And we met Harvey Kurtzman, and we were all on the search for Gary Groth. And so we all just bundled together and just kind of went around the con looking for Gary Groth with Harvey Kurtzman. He looked at our work and said, "Oh, this looks very promising." It was really nice. There was always somebody saying something nice every once in a while, but still nobody wanted to publish. Nobody at the time. It was just us selling it through the mail and everything. And because everybody was confused, they go like, "Well, there's not enough nudity. There's not enough this and that." I don't know. They just picked it apart, and it's kind of disconcerting, man. And so we didn't give up. And a lot of people, including Gary, got very excited about it. It was all timing. was all timing.
I will say about the about the Kurtzman thing that never gets old. People who you really look up to or whose work you really expect paying you a compliment never gets old.
Oh yeah, are you kidding? And being there and just talking like guys together. It wasn't like he was like, "Well, I'm Harvey Kurtzman, and I'm gonna follow," whatever. He was just a real down to earth guy. So, and most of these guys were too. Kirby, I met Kirby, man. Wow, man. I became a little tiny boy when I met him. He's the only celebrity I've ever been gobsmacked by.
What did you say to Kirby?
I shook his hand and I go, "You're responsible for me," and he laughed. He laughed and he
apologized.
And he goes, "I'm responsible for a lot of things." And his wife was standing behind him, and she starts cracking up. It was nice. I mean, I just didn't know what to say. And I've met everybody. I've met Tezuka. I've met Ray Bradbury. I've met a bunch of people. And I spoke to him, plainly. It was nice. But, but it didn't make me nervous or anything. I don't know. But Kirby, oh, man. I mean, he invented comics. So what the hey?
There's a handful of people. I mean, honestly, everyone you name, Tezuka certainly fits in that list for me of people who it's hard to reconcile the fact that they're, actual humans walking on this earth with the work they create.
I went to I've gone to film festivals where they had cartoons that he did that weren't, anime style stuff. And they were funny and they were clever and inventive. And then there was a show in San Francisco at the museums there, at the Asian Museum. And it was of all of his work. I didn't even know half the stuff that he did. Oh my gosh, what a true Renaissance man. He was a doctor, he was a scientist and all this other stuff. And then he did all jillions, of pages of comics, So I don't know, something to aspire to for all you youngsters.
Heard some variations, on the kind of the early days and how everything came together. And I didn't realize, or maybe I'd forgotten, I didn't realize that the three of you were really going out of your way to find Gary to get published. I guess I never really understood what.
Well, the whole idea was, okay, the what do you call it? Comics Journal. They hate everything. So
that is still to this day.
Right to the source, man. Let's just go right to the bad guy, and then let's see what happens. We probably would have got rejected from anybody else anyway.
Yeah, it's like talking to the Wizard of Oz. So you went to the convention in Los Angeles and you sought him out. I assume that you found him there and gave him your comics?
Because we had talked on the phone and stuff, and he wanted to. He wanted to publish us, and we had no idea. We had no business acumen or anything, and I still don't. But everything. The rest is kind of history. He was very interested in starting publishing books, on that he would like to see, and we were hot, especially Gilbert, who said, "I'm going to make comics that need to be seen. I don't care if it's not topical or whatever, let's do stuff that we want to read, that we would want to read."
Looking at the landscape in hindsight, it seems like there was a bit of, I guess, a dry spell. Obviously all of the 60s and 70s Crumb stuff had happened, and a lot of that sort of slowed down by the time you guys came along.
Yeah, but there was still some leftover stuff because there was, when I moved to San Francisco in '88, I believe, there was still a lot of guys still around, Spain Rodriguez and Checkered Demon, Clay Wilson, and there was still a lot of people around. And then there was some younger cartoonists,
Jay Lynch,
and they were all still living in the area, and we all were putting out comics, and it was still a little bit of a scene going. But then the independent movement started. Like I said, it was all timing. It wouldn't have happened 10 years earlier, because independent publishing was just not, you did fanzines. This is why we made our own book, because I was still in the fanzine mode. I thought, nobody's publishing somebody else that's an amateur. You do your own stuff, But then, this small press stuff started again, and it took off in the 80s and 90s were just nuts with them, you know?
Having talked to Jaime and Gilbert, I get the sense that they didn't have much in the way of expectations when they started, but the way you describe it, it sounds like you're very keenly aware that both of them were rocket ships.
Yeah, right away. I wanted them to go further with that, but you know, it's their work. No, I didn't realize Jaime's talent and his imagination, but Gilbert's imagination and talent. Gilbert is the Picasso of the family. He's up here compared even over Jaime. Sorry. He's the guy that's got so many ideas and not enough life, you know, this kind of thing. Jaime, he struggles to do his strip. That's his life right there. Don't make him do anything else. He loves that universe, and that's what he does. And and Gilbert, he's willing to just stretch out and go all over the place. And 9 times out of 10, it's still pretty damn good, you know.
That's certainly a fair assessment. And Gilbert with the Palomar stuff. I mean, talk about one of the great world building exercises in comics. But Jaime's, I think Jaime's arguably one of the best. Artists, illustrators out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I always talk about that. They put out those big books. They're $200 books of like original art and
artist edition. Yeah,
and they take these things, and a lot of them are really interesting because you see notations and corrections and all this stuff. But in Jaime's work, what you see is what you get. If you see whiteout in there, you get a prize. That's the way he works. It's just so clean. And anyway, and it's art. And it's here to here to there, to on the page, left-handed.
What were your personal ambitions in those days?
Me, just to get a job, a regular paying job. We were
not in comics.
No, not in comics. Just to pay bills and stuff. I was married, and I did have a job, but I'm trying to strive, at the time. And the boys, they were trying to just get out of being janitors, And I just thought, well, maybe I can help them by doing this for them, by helping them along anyway. And it like I said, it turned out it was a little bit of an adventure, but it got printed and people saw it, and the rest, and things got taken care of from there.
Looking at the earliest strips in this new collection that's coming out, you had very strong involvement in those days, particularly with the collaborations, with a lot of the storytelling.
Yeah. Because a lot of times Gilbert, he would be like, I'm stuck. I'm in Palomar. Do you have a story I can do, to fill 5 pages or 10 pages or something? And so, he did the errata stigmata thing with one of those, which really got me because I gave him a story with no characterization really or anything that just said, this person picks up these packages at the thing, and then they go to the bathroom, and then they go see this old lady, and it was just A, B, C, D, plot. And then at the end, there's a riot, da-da-da. And he took it home, and he turned it into that. It was like rubbing the genie in the lamp, man, and then you get back a really cool thing. And that's even better than what you imagined, You
allude to this, and they did too, that a lot of what the three of you were working toward was moving beyond the sort of the very obvious, specific genre comics that have been.
We were already bored with superheroes and even science fiction. Even
that's what I was going to ask, is because like there's a lot of science fiction in those early strips. It's very present. Yeah, well, that was just us trying to push it, make it get your attention, But as soon as it did get the attention, that's when they switched and they said, okay, this is what we really wanted. And like as Jaime, he just kind of eased into it. If you kind of look, all that stuff just went out. And then he started doing side stories like the Rocky stories and stuff. So he could do science fiction. Cause he did like it. I mean, he still liked doing it, and that's why I like in the new Love and Rockets, he's got that crazy superhero thing there. So he goes, I needed something to because Maggie and Ray don't have superpowers anymore, or whatever. So I need to do something just that I can just throw anything, into the mix, and I'm not going to worry about killing off a character or whatever. Anyway, that's his stuff.
anyway, we were down to who now?
It's interesting because, you're saying that they didn't really have, obviously much in the way of business acumen in the early days, but you were all very keenly aware of what would potentially move books. I mean, you were looking for that thing to hook readers.
Right. And we didn't, like I said, didn't want to do superheroes, but the science fiction stuff, I don't know, it kind of mixed with the magical realism stuff, a little bit, a little bit of the supernatural and a little bit of the alien and stuff like that. Okay, there's another thing. My first story, or the big story about this king and an alien and all that stuff. I'm just a big fan of screwball comedy, and one of my favorite movies in the world is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And you've got all these plots converging until they collide, and then splintering, and then coming back again and stuff. I wanted to do stuff like that, but of course, I had no training or anything, so I just sat down and, seat of the pants, gummed it out. And the thing was, and it was inspired also by the news. When the Shah of Iran got kicked out of Iran, his vice president, whatever he was or something like that, he kind of stayed to see if he could. But then he went on the run. And they found him in a motel in Iowa or something, and they assassinated him. And I thought, ooh, that would make a really cool story about a king, and stuff. But then I added all the other elements to it just to give it some silliness and comic bookiness to it. I like reading stories with all this odd stuff,
Sort of like the bombing story. There, there's some really interesting kind of macro stuff that you can look at there, in terms of like, what does a king do in a hotel?
Yeah. He's used to being, called upon. I'm sure nowadays it would be different. Everybody's a king, of some kind, if you got a lot of money. But I don't know. I'm very political. I've always been really political. I just needed to take a bite out of all this, people running around doing nasty things to each other, it's, I don't know. It's an everyday thing, but anyway, we can move on, I guess.
Did you consider your work itself to be political?
Kinda, yeah, here and there. Like I said, I stick it to the church every once in a while. Some of my stories, and I don't know. A lot of it is, and then there's all the not non-Love and Rocket stuff. I've always been a big fan of Mad Magazine, and I always thought I could do a book that would be like Mad Magazine, where I copy everybody's style and I do spoofs on their work. But boy, back in the day, you had, all these comic strips and stuff, and I guess you could kind of get away with it. But now all the creators I know are very thin skinned, and they really don't like being parodied,
Your brothers, so you can definitely mess with your brothers. It would be interesting to see you do a Love and Rockets parody book.
I was going to do a story of it was called it was an article called if Charles Dickens wrote Heartbreak Soup, and it was going to be set in Britain and stuff, and and I had a name for Luba. Her name was going to be Liza Flatterhoops.
You thought about this a bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I have a lot of epics sitting back here in flat files and stuff, and hopefully I'll be able to flesh them out, before too long. Any artists out there that really want to, I'm very fair in my rates or whatever, but just to get some of these things out in the world anymore. I've been sitting out all this time, and I don't know. Now I've got time, so maybe I can get some of this stuff out that I've been sitting on for a long time, and I have not seen anything like these things that I've got. I've never, even in movies or whatever, or other comics that I see. I don't read everything, but I thought this stuff is still pretty good, and if I can get it out there, I will. Somehow.
It's comedic.
Oh yeah. Well, it's comedic, and it's very. I'm a big fan of the opera, and one of those stories that I want to do is like an opera, and it plays like an opera, and it has to do with art and circus freaks and revenge and all this stuff, and it all mixed in a very very freaky mixed bag of stuff. anyway, things like that. And I want it to be weepy, I want it to be, the tragic and all that, because no good deed goes unpunished. And that's the way you end operas, man, until the fat lady sings and dies.
You were drawing some of the strips in the early days. Do you feel like you kind of went as far as you could go with that at the time?
It was just a matter of not enough time and not enough time to practice. I had, my family was growing, and I was, just working harder and harder. And and then Gilbert would, like I said, he would say, "Hey, I'll draw this thing if you want to, please, I don't want to write it. Please just, so I'd do that. That's why he did so many of a few of my things.
It sounds like you were sort of prepared to exit the book all along, that you weren't expecting to sort of be involved in it in the long run.
How long do I have to carry these guys? I mean, am I right? No, I'm kidding.
These talentless hacks. Yeah.
No, are you kidding? No. And I, you get to the point where, like, you know what? I'm never going to reach there. I'm not going to reach that. I'll get close, and then maybe I'll get, whatever, but I'm never going to reach that netter that those guys have, man. So you just kind of, and then work, and then old age comes along, and I said, I don't want a second job anymore. I'll step away for a while, see what happens,
I've tried to be better in my life about like being happy for people's successes and not, not being jealous. But I mean, was that hard to sort of watch them take off the way they did?
Oh yeah. Are you kidding? Yeah. I'm the one, like, I'm the oldest. I should be leading them, but, no, I could tell, and I'm humbled by it, that they had come so far and became so, not totally professional, but just very good, very damn good,
So what job did you end up taking?
Oh, I was a contractor for many years, and then, mostly, and worked for contractors. And then towards the end, I worked in homeless housing, transitional housing, and hospice. I was just, I don't know, give to the community. Although the community, sometimes you don't know if they're really worth it, but no, it was okay. It was just a really stressful job dealing with people, and it really taught me a lesson. Don't become homeless, man. Don't not. If you can help it.
I wasn't planning to, but yeah, no.
No. I'm just saying.
I know but it's like a feedback loop, right? It's like once you're in that position, it's almost impossible to get out of.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just bad luck. A lot of people that I ran into, all of it was just bad luck. But when they get sick, this bill doesn't get paid. You can't pay your rent. You get kicked out. You stay with some people, and it just went like that. Anyway, there's stories in there, but sad ones. I just didn't, and especially with kids, a lot of teenagers. I broke my heart. I couldn't work in it anymore. Too soft-hearted.
I came from a middle-class family, and I've mostly done all right. And it's something that really took me a long time to really understand what it means when people say that it's expensive being poor.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. We got comics.
You go from helping the unhoused people to hospice. I mean, these are both jobs that I think a lot of people are hesitant. I mean, as hard as it is being around unhoused people and seeing that kind of depressive state that they're in. I mean, I can't imagine dealing with people at end of life.
Well, yeah. And, what the place I was working at was a bunch of guys that had outlived their AIDS thing, their diagnosis by 30 years, So they were just waiting, and they've been waiting for years because all the drugs that they take, they would take bucket loads of drugs to keep them alive, and it kept them alive, keeps them alive. Some of those guys, I bet you, are still around. And I've been out of there for about 5 years now, but I bet you they're still around, some of them.
What's happened in terms of, AIDS specifically, of just going from, I mean, obviously, absolutely something you don't want to get, but not a life sentence in the way that it was, 10, 15 years ago.
Sure. Yeah. So, I don't know, man. I keep saying it. Comics.
It's comics, but it was comics and music for a while, right?
Oh, the music. Okay. The music thing. that's very close to what, especially like when the boys were doing that. They were right in the midst of the LA scene when it first started with the police riots and all this stuff, breaking up punk shows and all that stuff. And then just the fabulous punk shows that got put on when you came out of a show, the band would come out and hand you a flyer for their next show, and you could talk to them and stuff out in the street. It was that kind of time. And it was really exciting. I had a family and stuff, and I would get in every once in a while. But, me and Gilbert had gone to concerts during the glitter era and stuff. Saw dozens and dozens of bands, man. Everybody, Mott the Hoople, everybody.
You're talking glam.
Yeah, we're talking glam. And we went to it because LA was a big town that had a bunch of places you can go see these guys. And, tickets back then were like $6, $7,
Going to like the whiskey.
Oh yeah. My famous whiskey story is, I went to go see Ray Manzarek after the Doors had broken up and he was putting out his piddly little albums. And I was into him because I was hoping to hear some Doorsy kind of stuff, and I went to go see him at the whiskey and he was playing his show, and who would show up but Iggy Pop. And he got up on the stage and they just kind of chatted for a second and they turned around and they whipped into LA Woman and with Iggy doing the vocals and magic. What the hell can you say, man?
That's incredible.
It was incredible. And of course, Iggy, at the time, he used to scare the shit out of me. So we didn't stay for the second show. I kick myself to this day. He so scared me just doing this one thing. I just thought,
yeah,
that's too much. I'm a sensitive rock.
I mean, obviously, like people know he could be a little out of control on stage, but I don't think people really respect the extent of it. I mean, there were like, stories of him playing in front of bikers and, picking up the bottles they threw at him and slashing his own chest. I mean, he was really.
Yeah. The punk stuff, it was very influential. In fact, I just picked this off the wall up way out somewhere.
I had her on the show a couple of years ago. Penelope Houston was on the show.
Yeah. Penelope. I know Penelope from living in San Francisco. So
you're in San Francisco currently?
No, I'm in Portland, but don't tell anybody. No, San Francisco. I'm sorry, man. It's going to take a good 10 years to come back to anything. I'm sorry.
I'm from the Bay Area originally. I'm out in New York now, but I'm from the East Bay originally. So it's one of those.
It's sad over there, man. I'm sorry.
Deeply loving that city. I mean, it is a wonderful city and it's a beautiful
I spent
place.
30 years there, man. I spent 30 years of my life. That's half my life. I lived 30 years in Oxnard and I lived 30 years in San Francisco. So, wow, I loved it too. I love the town. I just wish the people that run the thing would know what they were doing. Whatever.
The wealth gap, but also being able to you to walk to be across the street from Twitter's headquarters and just watching somebody taking a shit in the street. I mean, it's exactly. It couldn't be more plain in front of you.
Yeah. Oh,
it's such a bummer.
Again. Yeah. No. No. Yeah. No. It's just that here is not too much better. Believe me. There's moments. In fact, one time when I first got here, I heard some homeless lady was yelling, "Fuck you! Screw you!" And I turned around and then I thought, I'm home. I'm back. I'm back in the Mission where I used to work. Where every day, you be cursed out for nothing. So, are
you in Portland proper?
Yeah. I landed here a few years ago, and I'm glad I sat out COVID here. It was a little better because I could get out and take hikes out into the mountains and stuff. So that was nice to be here for that. I mean, COVID wasn't nice, but
like I said, I live in Queens now, so it was kind of it's an impossible place to have lived in the last couple of years, and to wonder. I mean, I'm sure San Francisco, not that Portland's cheap exactly, but San Francisco is the same in that, at a certain point you start to wonder, why am I paying this much for rent if I'm not actually leaving my apartment
Right. Well, I'm here because my wife's parents are very elderly, and now we're going to be taking care of that. But she says, if you don't have to work, if we move, is that okay? And I go, when do we leave? Are you kidding? You mean I won't have to get on the bus again? Thank you. To God.
What does a day look like for you these days?
Me? Oh, no, just, lots of reading stuff, some TV. I do some drawing and I reshuffle some things and put new ideas in some of the old envelopes that I have, if I've thought of some new things and stuff. These things are still a work in progress in my head, and it's timing. One of these days, that's the same thing with Citizen Rex. It was just, Gilbert, this is how it panned out. I go, Gilbert, he goes, I don't want to write it, but I'll draw it for you. Let's do this book for Dark Horse for a little bit of money. Okay. I go, what do you not want to do? And he goes, I don't want to draw buildings. And I don't want to draw cars. And I don't, this kind of thing. And I go, okay, science fiction. And I go, your version of the future of houses and cars and stuff. And he goes, great, fine. Yeah. No, it was easy,
So it didn't start as science fiction. It kind of evolved into that based on
he had an idea. And then I had this idea about the famous robot, and that he's going around pilfering people's clothes for some reason. I don't know. I thought that was a nice big plot point for some reason. And then a lot of the actual pages I had already drawn long time ago, and just left them in this envelope. And when I gave the sketches to Gilbert, he just recreated some of them. And, it was all my dialogue and stuff, except for the best dialogue that he wrote in one panel. It was when this guy makes a little speech about being alive or wanting to be alive. And I thought, damn it, he just keeps doing this. That's the best line in the whole damn book.
Can't stop being a genius, and it's really cramping my style.
Give me a break here.
What's in terms of the stuff you have behind you, what's kind of the longest ongoing project?
Like the opera thing, because I did a story for Dark Horse called Los Malcriados, which is the brats, and it was about some circus freaks that were getting mistreated in their thing there back in the 1920s or something. I got that idea, and then I thought, well, maybe I could do the opera with circus freaks, use those same characters in an opera setting with a different plot and all that stuff, but the same characters. I like drawing them. That's what I liked mostly about it.
It's a fascinating subject. Have you read Geek Love?
Yes, and that's a book that nobody's ever equaled, And the woman that when I moved here to San Francisco, the woman that wrote the book died just as I moved here to Portland, and she never wrote anything else except for some book essay or something. And I remember when the book came out, it was one of those things that you saw in everybody's house. Geek Love was in their shelf.
Yeah, I think I probably have it up here somewhere. Yeah, it was like that Donna Tartt book, but I mean, I think it's a fascinating subject because it can be difficult to do in a humane way.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, I don't know. I just thought I thought it was neat that the woman with no arms was smoking with her feet, and the little tiny, the midget woman was married to the giant, and
being able to fully flesh them out and to realize that they're humans and that they're more than freaks.
Right. More than just their afflictions or whatever. No, I don't know. People always praise me for that. I like when they come up and they write. And I've also written a lot of phony legends. And
what's a phony legend?
Phony legend, like on the back of Love and Rockets, there's a couple of back pages where I did a thing about some wood that comes off this island, and people start to use it. The islanders that live nearby, they use it to make canoes and stuff because the wood returns back to the island where it originated. And so then I wrote that Vikings started using it to use in the ocean and stuff. And la la la, and then finally the island has disappeared. Nobody can find it anymore because it went off into the stratosphere. It floated away. That's the legend. And I would put stuff like that in Love and Rockets in there because back in the old comics days in the 60s, in the early 60s, they would the Charlton comics would have these science fiction books by Steve Ditko. And, and I was picking those things up. But every once in a while, they would stick in a page where it had a one-page thing about, some legend like that. And I found out years later that they were all lies. They were just made up, but they were played like real. And I was gullible. I was like, oh, yeah, there are things such as time pockets where if you stand in the wrong place, you'll disappear in front of your family, kind of shit. It was just crazy. And so I started making stuff up like that. And Gilbert put out a book called Measles. It was a kid's book that he put out, and it was an anthology where everybody could contribute. And I had some stuff in there. And I did a story called something about the Maiden of Mud, Celestra. And it's drawn in the real old style, real chunky style with brush and stuff about in the 1600s, about a cursed town that has a bell. It's a magic bell in the tower. And I don't know. It's got all sorts of weird little things, and it ends tragically where this girl has to sacrifice herself to get rid of the magic spell and all this stuff. I showed it to people, and they all said, "I've never heard of that legend. Where did you get it from? Where did you read it?" I'm like, no, I made it up.
People feeling like it must be an established thing. That means you've done it right.
So I don't know. I just try. I think those are really cool to do, but I mean, I'm not like trying to fool somebody, into whatever. I just think it's entertaining to take things that way. I mean, if you look at the graphic novels that come out these days, the ones that are bestsellers and stuff, tragic biographies, all tragic biographies. There's no fiction. The graphic novels that are fiction and stuff are I don't know. I don't see them much. It's always about somebody's life or how they got out of somebody's or their country and stuff, which very timely and very important that it happens. But like, where's the fiction, man? Where's the, is Saga the only thing that, is really blowing up these days,
I have a theory about that, which is, I think there's still an unspoken stigma about reading comics, about adults reading comics. And that's like, reading a harrowing true story about somebody's reading and obviously this is no shade against it. It's a wonderful book, but reading, Persepolis, for example,
right.
All of a sudden brings it up to this level of legitimacy that it might not have otherwise.
Well, it's a legitimate story, and everything, and this person actually lived it and everything. But I'm just saying, there's room for more stuff, but and maybe it's just not popular. I don't know. They might rather read romance books.
When we get this episode up, we're going to try to find the right artist for you, because I want to get seeing some of your books come to life.
That would be great. But I don't know. Like I said, the comics, man, since I was a kid, I was 5 years old when I got my first comic, and down the rabbit hole, and have never climbed out since. And so and because I have this obsessive personality, I just took it to the other level where I had to read anything about comics. Went to the library, opened up every encyclopedia where it said comics, and I would read that article. And then I'd go to this section and I'd read every book about comics, even if I didn't understand them. I read Seduction of the Innocent back when I was in middle school, and I didn't get it at all. But
it's not a very good book.
I wanted to read all those gory comics, though.
It's that thing of when you ban stuff from children, like they seek it out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's and it was fun. One of these days, going to see the light of day, an article about how I used to go buy comics when I was a teenager. I used to buy them at my corner store, and then the corner store stopped carrying magazines and comics, and so I had to start going downtown to newsstands. And back then, there was a bunch of newsstands still in our town, and there was the different owners, the different comics, but distribution was lousy. To get all the Marvel comics, like I would get everything except for Iron Man. So I'd have to go look for Iron Man in another place, and that kind of thing. And I had all these places that I could go to. And in the same time, I'm going into places that like sell Mexican comic books, just a big array of Mexican comics. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I'm buying that too, and, a lot of them are serialized, and I've got stacks of some of these that were just, 100 issues of something, these little tiny little things, it done in sepia tone, and I don't know. It was good times, man. Lots to buy. And at the same time, I was buying a lot of rock and roll records too. So it all was hand in hand. You got Beefheart, you got Marvel, you got whatever, So.
Were those Mexican comics? I mean, is that kind of, was that part of maybe the genesis of Palomar, or some of sort of the more Latin American flavored stuff that was going on over Rockets?
When we were teenagers and drinking illegally, me and Gilbert, we were the closest to each other. So we were always partying together. And I remember him just, spouting like, no, comics are supposed, he's like all of 17, 16 years old, he's like, no, comics are supposed to be about poor people in Mexico and, and stuff. And he's just going on and on about it. I'm like, okay. And then he'd tell me little stories that he wanted to do and stuff. And I like, okay. And then years later, here they come out in Love and Rockets, he had all these things stored up in his
That's
damn
wild.
brain. This Einstein of comics, man. He's also,
you're not super dissimilar, but yours are in, stacks behind you.
Well, yeah. Yeah. But, and Gilbert is also a encyclopedic knowledge of old monster movies. And I'm talking about the real creaky ones, and the ones from and the ones they all make fun of on Mystery Science Theater or whatever. And just by watching them on TV, he memorized a lot of this stuff. And I'll go like, hey, Brain from Planet Eris, what about it? And he's like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And so-and-so is in it. Brian Donlevy and blah, 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 or whoever's in it. And, he'll just go on and on about it. And I just think, okay, thanks. I'll watch it, kind of thing. He doesn't have to look it up or anything.